going?
All right, I think it's done.
Right, thank you all for coming. As is usual, we are going to open with public participation. We go right to left, so no. I knew you would, Chris, come on.
As I've said before, I think this council should consider having a property committee. I think Councillor Moore knows the advantages of having that. But I think it would be useful for you with your financial arrangements. And secondly, yesterday at the planning committee, planning application number 1, PA 25 03679, relating to the Carenza Hotel, Westbury Avenue. The chairman realised that he couldn't vote before this council because there wasn't time enough. So I said I would mention it. And I think there are things about it that your council needs to discuss this application at some stage. Maybe the officers could look at it or whatever he thinks appropriate. It seems that this fine hotel, which is a nice building, I used to live quite near to it. It's on the corner of Ocean View Road and Westbury Avenue. I think they intend to pull it down, completely pull it down, and then redevelop the site. Use that swimming pools and all sorts of things. So if someone within your staff could look at that, I think that might be a point that could be made to the council.
Okay.
I mean, I appreciate the plan and advice is you make application and you just get it because there's a housing crisis. But this seems to be, I think it said they want to build 8 or 9 houses on that plot.
Okay, I was expecting a comment on a planning application. I wasn't expecting that one though. Different hotel in mind.
I think also they had the decision from Anne.
Yeah.
And I had a quick look at the written thing, and I noted that there is nothing in there about any obstruction calls for the exit road from Summits Crescent, because if they don't get it right, then there will be massive traffic in the future. Winter time, not so bad, but if they should pick July or August, the town will be deadlocked. There's absolutely anybody with any local knowledge will know that. That's how it is now.
I agree, Chris. I could wax lyrical on that subject for a little while, yes. But we do want to get through tonight. Tom, did you defer the decision so we can bring it back, or did you come to a decision on the Carenza Hotel?
Yeah, there was, but I was in the minority of one, but in opposing the what was put forward, because purely on the grounds that I don't really see much point in including something that is not, of which there's no policy context. But the decision was to, it was a permission in principle application, and it was, the resolution was that the SCC had no objection in principle to the application, but would like to see the application address the local housing issue as per BSTC housing survey.
Okay.
As regards the issue raised by in relation to Elmore, the access was brought up time and time again, and unfortunately, Councillor Pat Richards did mention the possibility of that car park being flooded in the near future and becoming the beach and whatever. It was mentioned at the inquiry.
Tom, can I stop you? I'm really sorry, but it's coming to my mind that I live within 100 metres of this site, and if you're going to carry on, I think I might have got an interest. I should probably leave.
No, you should stay.
Right. Well, it depends what you're going to say. I don't want to hear anything I shouldn't.
No, all I was going to say was that it wasn't addressed by the inspector. Those issues, which in my view are entirely material, weren't addressed. So you could say that might be grounds for a judicial review, but I don't have enough money for it.
Okay.
Adrian Gallen, Connect View. Probably got a question for Councillor Bude-Stratton. Last meeting we had a discussion though on number 12 and all the chaos and that sport. Is there any update that we have currently on the position with Cornwall and their response to that?
Yes and no. I'm thinking of Councillor Tilsey, who was accusing us of prevaricating earlier.
Well, we will.
So I was going to report. I'll report on it in my councillor bit, if that's okay.
Okay, thanks, Pat. All right. In that case, we'll move on. Councillor Jennings.
This bus business. The reason it's like it is Go Cornwall are about the worst company for running a company, mismanaging everything. But their plan is to make it so difficult for people to use the buses, they can get rid of the routes they don't want. This is what it's all about.
Okay. Vicky.
I believe the issue of transport in North Cornwall was raised by Ben Maguire in Parliament.
I did read that, and quite a disappointing lack of funding heading our direction, I believe. Yes. Okay, all right. Any other comments? No, in that case, we'll move on. To receive any declarations of interest on items.
Apologies first.
Oh, apologies for missing apologies, to receive apologies and accept the reasons for any non-attendance.
I've had apologies from Councillors Corrigan Turner and Councillor Turner for personal reasons, and Cornwall Councillor Nicky Chopak.
Okay, thank you. To receive any declarations of interest on items on the agenda.
None have been received.
Mayor's report. I've only attended one official thing this month, which was the wreath laying ceremony for the commemoration of the Battle of Stamford Hill. It was a very well organised and well attended ceremony. I thought Sealed Knot turned up, and it did give myself, Councillor Broy was there, the chance to chat with several Stratton residents, and I'm happy to see that we've got the new county councillor for Stratton there, because I did promise to raise an issue with you. I was chatting to some of the people that live on Stamford Hill itself, and it was in relation to the 20-mile-an-hour zone potentially coming through Stratton. They would like to see it extended up to the top of Stamford Hill, effectively where the housing ends, because apparently it is a bit of a racetrack. So, well, there we go. It's been seconded, so I pass it on, but
Stop doing it, Ken.
Councillor LeBroy.
So Bude-Stratton are slated for the next round of 20-mile-an-hour zoning, and there's a meeting set up, which I think is on the. Well, it was meant to be on the 10th of June, I think, but I'm 26. Right. Okay, it's been rescheduled because of several people couldn't make it, but we can certainly bring those thoughts into it, because I think what's going to happen is we're going to get a map of the area of the zones put in front of us, and I'm sure it will come across the town council's desk as well.
Yeah.
And we can all just have a look at how that is going to work, how it works for us to have. These thoughts can be included.
Okay, brilliant. So yeah, that's what I've done this month. Coming up in June, for anyone interested, I've been asked to do an FA Cup style draw for a charity pedalo race to raise money for a local lady. So if anybody would like, I think it's on the 21st, wasn't it? Yeah, 21st. Organised by the Barrel at Bude. You've probably seen it all over social media, so I would encourage anybody interested to come along.
You'd be inviting Ed Davey.
He's got a little bit of talent in a pedalo, hasn't he? Yeah. But yeah, other than that, that is the Mayor's report. So with that in mind, to note any reports from Cornwall councillors, as it's your first time.
Thank you. It's very nice to be here, and I'm sorry I couldn't make the last meeting, although I don't think I'd have had anything very useful to say. I don't really have anything in particular to say at this point. I don't want to take up anyone's time. I'm obviously looking forward to working closely with you all and with Peter on issues relating to Stratton in particular. And I have, there's already quite a few items going on which some of you may be aware of. There's a lot of interest in the 20 mile an hour speed limits, particularly around Poff Hill, and that also in relation to some more planning applications that I think you're probably all aware of. And also there's a couple of fairly long-standing issues in Stratton as well around speed limits, traffic congestion, etc., which I'm sure will also come up in this meeting that's on the 26th of June. I'm happy to answer questions that anybody's got on any other items that might come up in relation to Stratton. No. Otherwise, if Peter's going to update on the number 12 bus, I'll happily hand over to you.
If you like.
I think the situation is on the number 12 bus route. We had a meeting involving all the councillors on that bus route between Bude and Plymouth, on the Cornwall side, obviously, and Go Cornwall. And the upshot of that was that the Go Cornwall were operating that direct route at a significant loss, which they understandably can't sustain indefinitely. They are able, I think, now to commit to a direct route from Launceston to Plymouth, cutting out the current changeover in Callington. I don't think they said when that would come into effect, which will obviously help, because I think from feedback we've had from people living along the route, that seemed to be the main point of difficulty, was missing connections in Callington. The Launceston bit didn't seem to be such a problem. So I think that would help, although obviously it's not as, it's nowhere near as good as the previous service. And other people have also pointed out the problems now of getting to hospital appointments and things in Exeter since that direct service was removed as well. So I think that was the gist of the, yeah.
So if you finished, Faye,
Yeah.
there's a little bit more to it. In as much as that conversation is not sealed off and finished, it's an ongoing conversation. And we asked Go Cornwall to go and do some investigation into what it would cost to reinstate the service as to what it was,
Yes.
which they have promised to do. And I think they have been asked to come back within a couple of weeks. And then we're going to have a further follow-up meeting. And in the meantime, I think Ben Maguire, MP, sorry, was going to see if there's any possibility of accessing any funding specifically linked to access to healthcare, which I think he thought there may be a possibility of looking in that direction. And in addition to that, MP Jane Kirkham, who's Falmouth, has been on the floor of Parliament talking about the disappointment that she had in the announcement of the billions of pounds made available for mass transport in northern parts of the UK and nothing for Cornwall. And she was promised and told by the Transport Minister that there would be further announcements in the spending review. But what that means, we don't know yet. I'll carry on. So my sort of political engagement at Cornwall Council has been different from the previous two terms, in as much as I put myself forward for a cabinet position, which I was lucky enough to get elected by my group to go forward to, and I've been awarded the housing portfolio. I need to be really quite careful in how I act, because for all intents and purposes of this meeting, when I attend as a Cornwall councillor, I need to be talking about issues that are directly affecting Bude. So whilst I'm more than happy to talk at length, as you know, about everything, I really should try and avoid too much cabinet stuff, but I welcome anybody talking to me outside of this meeting about my responsibilities at cabinet. I met with the police today, and we talked specifically about antisocial behaviour, particularly in a couple of properties around Bude. The police have been successful in obtaining closure orders on two properties at the bottom of Berries Avenue in the flats there, because there was lots of drug dealing and antisocial behaviour going on. Those closure orders means that the occupants of those properties can't access them now for 6 months or go on the site for 6 months. And hopefully neighbours will be able to at last get some peace and maybe even sleep. It was having a tremendous impact on the neighbours there. Shoplifting, I don't think they ever hope to get entirely under control, but there's 3 or 4 individuals who have been prolific shoplifters who they believe they are monitoring quite closely and have reduced their activity quite a lot. I've had complaints about the maintenance of the beach area above the beach huts at Mentone Beach on some of these downs. That's something which I will be looking into and trying to get resolved. This is sort of linked to my cabinet job, but not, so I'm quite happy to talk about it. But one of the things that we did at the last administration council was to, and I voted for it, was to make 100% council tax premium on second properties. And people are now trying to escape that by re-registering their properties as businesses. If they do that, they generally escape paying business rates because they fall below the threshold for making business rates. So it's a tax avoidance, and I'm on record of saying that these people should be ashamed of themselves. And I'm going to do everything I possibly can to make sure that if people want to own a second home in Cornwall, or Bude specifically, I don't really have a problem with that, but I think they should stump up a bit extra to help our communities. Thus endeth the report.
Okay. Kevin.
Yeah, on the 12, I might be wrong in this, but I believe that ever since there were buses, just about ever since the invention of the internal combustion engine, there has been a direct service to Plymouth. Certainly there was back in the 70s when I was a kid. If there was only one bus a day, at least it went to Plymouth. You got off at the bus station and you got back on the same bus at the end of the day and travel back home on it. If it isn't possible to completely reinstate the service as it existed previously, I think there should be an attempt to at least have a couple of direct services during the course of the day. Because with my Bude and District Age Concern hat on, one of the problems when you're going to Darriford, it's not that, if you could take a direct service in the morning to get, even just to get into Plymouth and then get out to Darriford, and know that there was another direct service coming back in the evening, that would at least enable people to use public transport for their hospital appointments. It would be convenient, but it would be possible. At the moment, the way the connections work, particularly the one in Callington, which I know, won't be happening, but with any sort of connection, it creates a doubt and it puts a lot of pressure on Bude Age Concern to provide more volunteers to do more hospital trips to Darriford.
I'll just respond to that. All those points and more were made in that session that we had. I have got a comprehensive set of notes that were written up by Sarah Ball from that meeting. I'm inclined to think that there's no reason why I shouldn't circulate them around this group if they would be interested to see them.
Okay.
I just want to talk about transport as well. I can't really describe how shocked and disappointed I was about the fact that we seem to have ended up with no money in Cornwall that relate directly from the refunding model for HS2. Because when that was done, we were virtually promised that we were going to get money by the previous government. And it turns out we haven't. We all understand the difficulties locally of the transport issues we've had, and it's been ongoing, and getting gradually worse for years and years. Connect Bude are absolutely engaged with it. I think that what it's about is representation, ultimately. There's a reason why money's going elsewhere and it's not coming here. And often that's about the conversations that are had in Westminster, and it's about MPs, and it's about making sure that what we've got is a voice that's being heard in the right places to ensure that that money's then allocated where it needs to go. There's nobody in this room that doesn't think there needs to be more money spent on transport in Cornwall generally, and in this area in particular. So therefore, I think this council, our councillors, Cornwall councillors, our MP, have a responsibility to voice those concerns at every level, at every opportunity. But it has to start at ground level. So we as a council have to formulate some form of lobbying, some form of voice that reflects what the community think they want, to enable our councillors to then represent that
in council and then for that to be represented in Westminster. So we need a plan of action, to be absolutely honest, because otherwise we're just going to continue to talk about this stuff as we have done for years at a local level. Nothing ever really seems to happen. It can't be left in the hands of the bus companies running a business, because ultimately they're running a business and that's all they're interested in. They're interested in making money and they've got to do that. And of course, it's got to be commercially viable. So most of these routes are not viable unless they're subsidised. Now, that subsidy money is either going to come from Cornwall Council or the government. There's no other option. We can talk about it ad infinitum, but it makes no difference. So I would urge this council, perhaps, and maybe we can talk about this in some other way, to think about how we're going to strategise that and how we're actually going to represent that. That's going to make a difference.
Yeah, Councillor Burrow, I know you don't want to talk about housing, so I'm going to talk about housing. And with your, I think it's fair to say that in the past you and I have both been quite vocal about the need for social housing as a solution to the housing crisis rather than affordable housing. So, keeping this Bude-Stratton centric, when can we see an increase in the provision of social housing in Bude-Stratton?
Do you know what? I've got an answer for you.
Oh, Peter,
Okay. I'm astonished that I can actually pull this one out. Right, so the answer is before the end of this year.
Oh, good.
So you might know the Binamy estate. Where you drive in past Little, and if you go in and you sort of follow your nose round left, and there was a big field which is directly behind the shop called B&M, and that's currently being developed out, and that is being developed out by a builder on behalf of Cornwall Council, and that is a mix of social housing, also known as council houses, but some of them will also be for direct sale at affordable levels, and some of them will be shared ownership. But there's 20 houses there, all of which will be affordable. Some of them will be council houses on social rent.
And is there protection of those houses from future?
Yes, absolutely.
Right to buy?
Absolutely.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Right, we'll move on.
Well,
Darky.
it's all very well having social housing, but every time it comes up, Bude people don't get it.
You have made this point quite often, and it's a fair point.
But we need a guarantee that you've got local housing for local people. We've still got a place empty.
Yeah, I know, and they have
We was in it a month
local
ago.
connection point scoring from the matrix, which for me was,
Bude houses for Bude people. This council should be fighting for that.
yeah,
That's the most important thing there is.
okay.
I'll answer if you want me to.
Do you want to?
Yes.
Go on then.
Right, so the portfolio as cabinet member that I begin is housing. You got that bit?
Yeah, I understand that.
So I've already met with officers and I've already said to the senior housing director that I'm very concerned about the change in the allocation policy, and I want to get my nose right in it so I understand why the change was made. And if it disenfranchises people with local connections and takes away that advantage, I will try and get it changed.
We're in this mess because of that slime ball Wally and his one Cornwall.
Right, Jack.
Far back to be.
No, it was North Cornwall District Council. You had to have a local connection to get
Be
a
careful
place.
what you're saying,
I'm just telling the truth.
because I don't want to be stuck in meetings dealing with your outbursts. Word it better.
To his face, it don't matter.
Well, I don't, yeah, exactly. Say it to his face, not on the internet, and we'll be all good.
But you know,
Sorry, Councillor Jennings, please be aware that Councillor Wally is still a living human being, and if he was listening to this broadcast, he might not like what you say.
Yes, exactly.
you should have heard what I told him to his face.
Okay, right. We are now going to move on. So, the minutes, full council to approve the minutes of the previous meeting on the 12th of May 2025. I propose we do that. Seconded, all in favour? Against? Abstain? Committees to receive and note the minutes of the committee meetings listed below. The Planning Committee of the 21st of May 2025. Vicky.
I would just like to raise something that happened at that planning meeting. Under correspondence, a letter was sent in regarding the development, the depot, some people who have moved into the property, I believe they only moved in March, are having issues with deliveries, and they would like the back lane there renamed Gear Lane, I think it was.
Sorry, you mean the lane that comes off Lansdowne Road that's always been known as Lansdowne Lane?
Yeah. They would like that renamed as Perry Lane in remembrance of their uncle.
Okay. Right, that's Lansdowne Lane that leads into Burnview Lane that runs along the back of the old Burnview, just so in my head I know where we're on about.
Yep, the one that you bottom of the close you can shoot straight across into.
They want to rename a road.
Right, okay, so
Wow.
let me shortcut it.
Yes.
Can I ask Councillor Herbert Clausen to write to me, because handily that does fall within my portfolio of responsibilities.
Yeah, that's Lansdowne Lane.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. What did the planning committee do with it?
So the locals voted not to do it, and the others voted for it.
Can I change that? I believe the planning committee voted for it, and I think it's important that there isn't a local versus others.
Yeah, be careful again with the way you're wording things, but did anybody raise the fact that that's been Lansdowne Lane since horse and carts?
No.
I used to live in the flat along the back above, oh God, the shop's changed now, what is it? Not Bellini's, the yoga studio.
Yeah.
Got steps that goes up the back.
Yeah.
Going back to the 90s now, and my address there was Bellevue Lane, and as soon as you hook through the chicane, you're on Lansdowne Lane and you come out on Lansdowne Road. I know it's done. It's just... Okay, yeah, I'm not going to say what it is. Councillor Gibbs.
I was just going to say, can I just suggest that we move on? All we're doing is noting the minutes.
Yeah,
We're not
yeah.
in a position,
Yeah.
not in a
Yeah.
position to debate it. It's already been done in the meeting, regardless of what the outcome is. That's what the outcome is. So if we can just stick to the.
Yeah, we can, but when we tried to rename the Ivor Potter Hall, all hell let loose.
Yeah, no, I get it, but it's not.
And
But
we
we're not
might find ourselves in the same situation.
We might, but that's a planning committee decision, isn't it? All we're doing.
I would, yeah, okay, well, we will move on after I suggest that the next time we try to rename something in Bude, it is recommended to full council.
Yeah. I would agree with that.
Now we'll move on. Is everybody happy to note the minutes of the planning committee?
Well, we note the minutes.
All in favour? Good. Cultural and Heritage Services Committee, 22nd of May 2025. Seconder? All in favour? Cool. Corporate and Democratic Services Committee, 29th of May 2025. We've got a recommendation. The C&D Committee, CD 04525, recommend to full council in light of pre-application advice from Cornwall Council Planning Officer not being favourable in respect of the highways element, that BSTC keep the property, obtain a public works loan to undertake the renovations to the shop and the flats with a view to renting out the flats through an agent.
I propose that the recommendation is approved. Would you like me to speak on it?
Would anybody like to speak on it? We're overturning a full council resolution if this gets approved, so I'm going to give everybody the chance to speak if they want to.
Well, in effect, we're not, because the resolution...
Well, I know, yeah, it's hit the 6-month mark, but...
No, but it was dependent on planning permission, of being in a position...
And we've not put the planning app in yet, so...
Well, that's the point, actually.
It's an extremely valid point, Tom, yes.
Well, and I was going to raise it, and I haven't said it isn't a valid
Yeah.
point. But why would we not put in an outline planning application rather than a pre-advice app? Because they'll always come back with something in them for everybody, and they're always indecisive by their nature. So, but this one does raise issues, as we know, about the highways, which are significant. So I was put on the spot somewhat at last week's meeting about why pedestrians and people walking to and from the school, it was considered safe. The application at Howes Road for property houses, that there was no concerns about pedestrian users of etc. crossing in relation to the school. As it happens, that planning application was actually assessed before I was a member of the planning committee, but I did go back and exercise due diligence to have a look at what, and it addresses pedestrian issues at Skitches Corner. It says nothing about the pedestrian issues at Howes Road, and in any case, the concerns raised by the highways officer relate to the proposed lay-by. It says nothing about any issues relating to the pedestrians. So it's a bit of a red herring. But there is serious reservations about highways issues, and I think that if we go for a planning application now, it's already taken 6 months, hasn't it? We're going to go on. This is going to go on and on and on. We need to bring clarity and certainly the direction of travel in relation to this issue. I perfectly understand the councillors around this table who have, to a certain extent, I suppose, resent the fact that we are in this position and disagree with the decision to buy the property in the first place, or the way the decision was arrived at, or both. And I fully sympathise, but we do need to move this forward. And I think that if we now say, we've got put in a planning application, we know there's going to be highways issues, putting in even if we were able to persuade Common Council to put in a pedestrian crossing, doesn't address the issue, the concerns that were raised anyhow. So I would hope that we could hold our nose while doing so, but approve this.
Okay. Kate was first, then Kevin.
So I mentioned at the meeting about speaking to highways and actually having a conversation with them about what was their issues. We also mentioned about the 20 mile an hour coming in. That would also make it safer. They talked about creating a lay-by. That potentially would make it safer. And it was mentioned about having a crossing put in, which I also think will make it safer in general down in Stratton, just with or without moving the shop. I think it's a great idea. My concerns are, it's a lot of money that this council will be paying off for a very long time. And I made the comments, and that by the time we would have paid all that money off, one, the shop may not be needed at that point, because in 25 years things might have changed. The shop might not be there. Who knows? This council might not even be here. It might look totally different in 30 years' time. And to ask essentially everybody in Bude-Stratton to pay for this, I think when we have money to potentially build a newer shop, and the gentleman from the shop was here, and he was more than happy to move into a new shop with, the prospect of, the speed limit changes and a crossing. He was perfectly happy with that situation. And this council agreed that.
Kevin.
I think it's important that a new council gets to have a look at this, and gets to have a look at this at an early stage. We talked a lot prior to buying Lord's Court about coulda, woulda, shoulda. Coulda had a different place, could have built somewhere on a greenfield site, shoulda maybe perhaps rearranged the toilet block, all sorts of coulda, woulda, shouldas. And then we were right up against the auction being held for that shop, the shop having a notice to quit, and the absolute reality is there would be no shop, there would be no post office. That would have gone. The likelihood, because we know how these things happen, the likelihood is that building would now be being developed, or probably already have been developed, into a second home, an Airbnb, those sorts of things, not accommodation for local people, and a little bit more gentrification and a little bit more gutting of the old historic town of Stratton. So coulda, woulda, shoulda didn't work. We ended up buying the place. And you can say that was a poor decision.
It was, yeah.
But
Absolutely shocking decision.
we can all say it was or was not a poor decision. And I defy anybody who's been involved in any development of any property. If you're right at the worst point, where you're just about to start the big building phase, it's going to look terrible. Everybody who's taken on a major project wishes they hadn't at that point. And then you move forward from there. And money that is spent on that property is money that is going to enhance that property. It's money that's going to keep a business and a facility within the historic town of Stratton. And longer term, it will provide the possibility for accommodation units for local people that we would have control over, and that we could set up an arrangement with a local estate agent or someone else to administer on our behalf. So we're right at the worst point where we could be embarking on building. Now, we are in a position as a local authority to borrow money at preferential rates. We could get that place done up. We could have a resource in Stratton. And by the way, we've done up money pits before. This building here, the castle, one of the greatest money pits in the town.
2 minutes is. I'm trying to decide how to politely. We're rehashing a lot of your old arguments.
Well, there is a new council. There are people around this table that know.
You sold us this line 2 years ago, and 2 years on, we're still staring down a financial black hole that we can't see the bottom of, Kevin.
We have
You've had your say. I'm going to let Peter have it. When the thing to note here on this agenda is we cannot redefine the wording of what is in front of us. What I read out is what we vote on. We either vote to approve it or deny it. We do not get to renegotiate the terms of this. If we approve it, it goes through. If we don't, it goes back to C&D, and the current resolution, full council resolution, would still, to my mind, be valid.
Would it be helpful if I read what that was?
Yes, so if the Deputy Clerk reminds us of what that is effectively the choice. So we're not going to renegotiate this now. We either accept what has been recommended, or we bat it back to C&D and say, come up with something else.
So, through you, Mr. Chair. So in December, the council resolved to approve option 3 that was set in front of them in the associated report, which was to repair the ceiling of this existing shop, repurpose Stratton Toilet Block as the local shop, post office and accessible public convenience to be maintained by the shop, and to move the shop and post office into the repurposed building, to sell One Lord's Court as an entire empty building on the open market.
Yeah, and there was an amendment that we would not sell until we had found a home, not specifying which home, for the post office. So the post office shop will always have a home until another is found. Peter, then Tony.
Of course, all this comes at a cost, and I fully appreciate why people want to retain a post office and shop in Stratton, and I completely support the idea of having it relocated to the existing toilet block and repurposed. As my colleague has said, it's quite doable, and highways have not said it's not possible, they've just raised concerns. So it's not a no. And, well, you know it's not a no. No,
It was.
No, but it comes at a cost as well to our taxpayers, and we already have some of the highest council tax in Cornwall. We were about 6th or 7th now, we're about 3, so it's not a good thing to keep borrowing more money. And the amount that is being suggested to borrow is £350,000. The total cost of refurbishment, according to Hayden Associates, which I've taken the time to read, which is a comprehensive report, and it makes grim reading. The total cost of refurbishment is £487,000, according to this document. And I don't think it's a justifiable expense when there's already enough money to be able to repurpose the toilet block, relocate the post office. The gentleman who runs it had no objection to moving there. In fact, I probably quite like it. With all the houses that are going to be constructed as you leave Stratton, on the left and potentially on the right, I think it would be quite a good location and be better than where it is at the moment. I'm the chairman of that committee, but I didn't support it. It wasn't a unanimous decision as well. Recommendation.
Tony?
So as a new member of this council and someone who was on the council when this was first discussed, though I don't think I was actually part of it when the decision was made, I had deep reservations about this in the first place. It felt to me that this council made a knee-jerk reaction to a plea to save a business in in Stratton. My first concern is that I'm not entirely sure as a town council it's our responsibility to do that. And can you just remind me what we paid for the building in the first place?
We paid close to 300,000. We've spent a lot more since. We've hired 2 additional staff. The vast majority of the last council tax precept rise was to cover those wages, and we've got that bill in front of us.
Right, and I appreciate you, Councillor Colwyn might be shaking his head, but as a council taxpayer and as a member of the public, when this was done, we were promised by the previous council that any money being spent by the council was going to be consulted on. Well, nobody asked me if you wanted to spend my money on buying a shop in Stratton. I now pay this council more council tax in the town than I paid to Devon and Cornwall Police. And we're now looking at spending an additional, just remind me, Peter?
487,000.
487,000 on top of the 300,000 that we've already spent.
It's going to be close to £1 million to
effectively be the landlord of a single shop and a post office and 3 tiny flats that we're likely to recoup, if we're lucky, what, £1,000 a month maybe?
More than that.
Yeah, maybe, but again, we want to make them affordable apparently. So we're never going to recoup the money, never in a million years. And what we're doing is asking the residents of Bude-Stratton to effectively fund the shop in Stratton. What I would suggest is, if we're really serious about this, that we need to do a proper consultation, we need to do a proper cost-benefit analysis, and we need a proper business case. This idea that we can sit around the table here and decide that we're going to spend £1 million on a shop when we really don't know whether it's necessary or not. Has anybody asked anybody in Stratton whether they're prepared to run a community shop like they do in Marham Church? They could run a community shop in the pub. Has anybody spoken to them about that? Has anybody spoken to the post office about providing a mobile unit maybe twice a week in Stratton? Has anybody done that? And yet, rather than do that, we'd rather spend nearly £1 million of taxpayers' money to solve a problem that may not need to be fixed. And personally, I feel that this council has made some poor decisions in the past that's cost us as local council taxpayers money already, and we're now considering spending even more. And it makes absolutely no sense to me at all.
I'm going to go to Councillor Jennings. He's been waiting a while.
I've probably got all this wrong, but didn't the Shepherd Boy Rodney on about the post office might not want to move? They could do away. They could say, no, we're not going down the bottom. We're going to do away with the post office.
They could do. I actually, with this in mind, because I know I went up there yesterday to speak to the post office and chat to some customers while I was there. All they are concerned with is having post office facilities in Stratton that they.
Who, the people or the post office?
The people at the post office and the customers I spoke to. Yeah, I spoke to the staff, and their concern is losing the post office and obviously having a small store somewhere that people can get to, whether it's where it is now or 100 yards down the road. They're not overly concerned. Obviously, it was a very small data set. I didn't speak to every single person in Stratton, but that was the take. Quickly.
Just a quick question then relating to the post office, and it's probably worth bearing in mind because I don't know. But even if we were to provide the premises for the post office, surely it's for the post office PLC to decide whether they actually want it there or not. And we could end up spending all of the money if the post office business doesn't see it as being viable, and they could just remove the facility anyway. So you end up spending all of the money, and then you end up with and we've got no control over that. You know, it's not like we get a promise from the post office that we spend £300,000 and they're going to guarantee a post office in Stratton for 10 years. You're not. They could pull out next year. Well, yeah, so I can't,
David was here last week and he did say he would need advance notice so he could clear up with the post office. So it could be stopped before it ever went too far. That will have to be found out first.
And what worries me is it doesn't feel like we've done any of that stuff before we're already trying to vote on.
Well, this is, the second we decided, and I use the term we quite loosely, decided to buy that, we locked ourselves into a long-term decision, and any chance to go out and do all the consultative work, and bearing in mind, this was a council that largely, at the time, had got in on the basis of consultation. None was done. It was a snap decision made off the back of, I have to say, a fantastic argument, a very emotive argument. It didn't convince me, and it didn't convince a few other people in the room, but it was a bloody good speech. But yes, and once that decision had been made, there was no point going out and doing all that consultative work. We were dealing with the fallout of it, and
but now, do we not now have a position to do that? Potentially?
Exactly. Yes, while we look at the planning issues and everything like that, we could be doing that additional work, trying to find out exactly what the need is, what would be acceptable, whether it's deliverable. So that would be my position. Like I said, but in this meeting right now, we can either say yes or no to this. All of those conversations can happen if we back this back to C&D. If we approve this, we can't. So I will let more people speak, but I do want to move on. Is it going to be something new, or are we going to hear?
Addressing some of the points that have been raised, but others have been allowed to speak.
Possibly Kevin has had his hand up as well. So that I will let you both have a go, but it needs to be new information, not something I've sat through 10 times before, if that's okay.
Yeah, and like I say, others have been allowed to go. So
yeah, Tom, go.
I will address Councillor Gibbs' point about consultation. I have tried to make it theme the meet council sessions at Stratton on the shop issue. Disappointing, very disappointing from my point of view. Nobody turned up. So that kind of destroys my.
There might be a message there.
I think you mentioned emotion, and it seems to me that there's most emotive figures being thrown around as regards how much it cost and repayments and all that. You are correct. We haven't gone into detail, but personally I have looked into, based on the figures we're previously presented with, and the repayments of the loan could be done without impacting at all on the precept. If we borrow money over 17 years, the figure is inflated by the inclusion of the VAT element. As former Councillor Pertles pointed out back in December, there's no real need to borrow the VAT element because that can be reclaimed.
Okay.
So the other thing is, I queried the legality of the council building a new shop, a new premises, and not putting it out to tender, offering other people the opportunity. We can't just say we're.
Tom.
So I'm raising it as an issue.
Digressing massively though. All right.
To me, it's very relevant.
And until we've got that building, we don't need to worry about how we tender it. What we need to do now is decide on whether we are doing this or batting it back to C&D.
Well, it has been mentioned so many times that the present shop owner our business owner is satisfied. But I'm just pointing out there's a counter argument. I think that's reasonable.
Okay.
Also, the longer these flats are left vacant, this council is paying council tax on them.
Yes, I know. And if the original structural engineers report had been listened to, we would have known they would be vacant for
you
this
say
long.
we're guessing, but we can't go back.
Tom, there's 4 people with their hands up. All of these points have been made a lot. Okay, I don't want to shut you down, but you've been given ample chance. Okay, I understand your points, but we need to make a decision on what was resolved by C&D, and I'm sure C&D batted around this one for a while. Yes. Okay. Jeremy, Vicky, Paul, I'll give you one more go, Kevin, and then we are making a decision.
Very briefly, it seems to me we are where we are. I very much support the proposal that we do a good business case review of this, and hopefully at some stage at the end of this process, we'll sit around and do a lessons learned, because as a council, we need to learn from these issues, and in the hope that we won't just rely on institutional memory, but we'll actually learn something to actually inform things going forward.
Going forward, yeah.
I think we should go back and have a full business look at it. The caveat is the flats will continue to deteriorate, and there will be some expenditure in kind of mothballing them, albeit for a short period. So we need to be prepared for that. But I think it's probably worthwhile.
Yeah, I actually agree with what you're saying, but we cannot resolve to do that now. We can either say yes or no to what's in front of us. Vicky?
Do we have the costings for converting the toilets? Are they being raised to the ground and then rebuilt, or what?
No.
Do we have those costings?
To my knowledge, we do not have them.
I feel they would be useful within the decision making.
Okay, so yeah. Paul?
Can we vote?
Yeah. Please, somebody make a proposal.
I already did.
Yeah, so anybody want a second?
Well, just,
Kevin, if it's quick and new.
yeah, just a couple of rebuttal points. The SIL money was taken. The SIL money was taken for the purchase of Lord's Court, and the effect on the precept was minimal. I was going to say nil, but I will say minimal.
Our reserves on it.
But that was money that was effectively SIL money that was taken for the purchase of Lord's Court.
Money that was set aside to do the skate park.
But SIL money could never have been used for the skate park. That's not the nature of the SIL funding. But that's my understanding of it. So that's that point. And the other point I was going to make has already been raised by Vicky. There is a cost to doing the works down at the toilets. And we've got the costings for the works at Lord's Court. We haven't got the costings for the works down at the toilets.
Okay.
I know, but
Quickly.
it's about the costings. Obviously, if you sell Lord's Court, you're going to have 300,000 because it's been valued at 300,000.
Yeah.
You won't have to borrow 300,000.
Okay.
So where's the shop going to go between selling and...
At the moment.
It just feels to me as if we poured a whole lot of emotion into this and not an awful lot of diligence.
Exactly.
And I don't think we're in a position to spend £1 million on something at this point. We need to go back.
We need to do the diligence. Exactly. Okay, right. We are going to.
It's not £1 million, and also, can I just it's significantly different. It has been. There was a working group set up. Some of us did take part. Some of us didn't. There was, it was referred to C&D committee, and there's been ample opportunity to discuss it already, but there seems to be lack.
Right, okay, we are going to go to a vote now. If that proposal wasn't seconded, I'm going to second it. Your proposal, Tom? What was your proposal? To accept it? Everybody understand what they're voting on? If you vote yes, we are voting to borrow money, do the place up, turn it into flats. If you vote no, it will go back to C&D committee, who can discuss other options and come up with a new plan.
Do they have to come back to the full council?
And it will then have to come back to us. And we can do this dance again, all right? That is what we're voting on. Does everybody understand? Yes, this happens. No, it goes back. We do more. It comes back again. Right, all in favour? Against? Abstain? Okay. There we go.
Mr. Chairman.
Well, I did say I would let everybody have the chance to speak because it was going to overturn a full council resolution.
I think I'd want to check with our deputy clerk, but I think it can be appropriate to make a further proposal on the matter that has been on the table, which I'd like to do.
Hold on.
But before I do that,
To approve the minutes of the previous meetings, recommendations. I haven't got.
It's amendment.
This is the one trouble with being in this seat. I haven't got my laptop and access to the stuff in front of me. I was going to say it is to approve the recommendation. It needs to go back to C&D. Was my read on it.
I would be nervous, Councillor Roy, sorry to you, Chair, because we have an agenda doing that.
Yeah.
As such.
Okay.
Chair, can
we are going to
make a final decision on the application of the.
Item 6.
We are going to move on to item 6. It is up to me, and we're moving on.
That's right. I'm just finding out.
To approve the finance report, schedule of payments made between the 30th of May and 5th of June 2025. Opposed? Seconded? All in favour? Against? Abstain? Okay. Schedule of payments to be made on the 6th of June 2025. Opposed? Seconded? All in favour? Against? Abstain? Year-end accounts approval. To consider and note the year-end internal audit report 24/25. Is everybody happy to note it? It's noted. To receive and note the 24/25 year-end budget reports. Is everybody happy to receive and note it? Yeah, okay, it's noted. To receive and note the reserve movement for the year ended 31st March 2025. Is everybody happy to note it? Yeah, cool, noted. To approve the asset register at the year end 24/25. This one is going to require a vote, I would say, because it's approval. Proposed, seconded, all in favour? Against? Abstain? To approve the chair's signing of the year-end bank reconciliation. I propose that I do that. Seconded, all in favour? I'm going to do it once we finish the vote. Against?
No, we can.
Where am I?
Yours is definitely different to mine.
Bank reconciliation 7E. Yeah,
where we are.
Right.
So if I've got reads out.
Yeah. I'm going to hand over to the deputy clerk to read this interesting literature for us.
Right. Got to take these one at a time.
One at a time.
Sorry for you. Thanks. We'll crack off because it's 7 o'clock.
Yeah. Get on with it.
Right.
I think if people have read the auditor's report, the auditor.
Okay.
It's perfect.
Was it?
I know, but not now. Avoid any questions. It's all in the order.
Yeah, okay.
I'm sharing as well.
Yes.
So we just have to agree to what happens if we get on well. We don't.
Right. Cheers.
Okay, so number one,
This is an interesting moment.
We have put in place arrangements for effective financial management during the year and for the preparation of the accounting statements. Yes, we did.
Yeah.
We maintained an adequate system of internal control, including measures designed to prevent and detect fraud and corruption, and reviewed its effectiveness.
Yes.
We took all reasonable steps to assure ourselves that there are no matters of actual or potential non-compliance with laws, regulations and proper practices that could have significant financial effect on the ability of this authority to conduct its business or manage its finances.
Yes.
Thank you. We provided proper opportunity during the year for the exercise of electors' rights in accordance with the requirements of the Accounts and Audit Regulations.
Yeah.
We carried out an assessment of the risks facing this authority and took appropriate steps to manage those risks, including the introduction of internal controls and/or external insurance cover where required.
Yeah.
Chairman, on that one, where it says in the other half of that, consideration of documents, the financial and other risks. I've got down here global warming, and this will be underwater. That's all.
Well, we're dealing with that
We haven't started dealing with it.
Well,
I'm happy to talk about Lord's Court on the Hill. However, moving on.
Yeah.
Right, yes.
You propose.
We maintained throughout the year an adequate, effective system of internal audit and accounting records and control systems. Thank you.
Yeah.
We took appropriate action on all matters raised in reports from internal and external audit. Thank you. We considered whether any litigation liabilities or commitments, events or transactions occurring either during or after the year end have a financial impact on this authority and, where appropriate, have included them in the accounting statement.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. For local councils only, trust funds including I don't think that's us. No, not applicable. I will not read it.
Okay.
Thank you for indulging me.
Well done. Which one was that? The governance.
That's the only government said, yeah.
Okay,
we need to vote.
we're going to carry on. To approve the accounting statements 2024-25 for the annual return of the year ended 31st March 25. Proposed, seconded, all in favour?
Thank you.
Good. To approve the dates for the exercise of public rights, which will be the 13th of June 2025 to the 24th of July 2025. Proposed, seconded, all in favour? Abstained?
Just through you, Mr. Chair, the public that are here, if you wish to review the accounts, you may do so between those dates. Thank you.
Okay, on to item 8, to approve members to Corporate and Democratic Committee, Councillor Gibbs and Tilsey. I propose we approve them, seconded, all in favour? Against? Abstain? Facilities and Environment Committee, callers Herbert Coulson and Tilsey. Again, I will propose that we second it. All in favour? Against? Abstain? To appoint members to the following committees, we're looking for 3 members for Cultural and Heritage Services. Any volunteers? To be honest, we're probably going to need to fill these when we've got the additional councillors in. Yeah. Anyone want to go on planning? One person?
I'd quite like to just.
I propose Councillor Tilsey.
I'll second that.
It's already on.
I thought that was on.
Are you already on it?
Nobody's told me when it is.
Without worrying.
There's a problem with emails.
Yes,
Right.
we're working on that.
Okay,
We don't leave
fine. Right, Shush, we're moving on.
Thank you.
Thank you for that comic interlude, Councillor Tilsey. Right, anyone? Marky, shush. Staffing Committee, we need 1 member. No, all right, we'll ask the new ones when we get here. Consider continuing the lead councillor roles, and if so, to appoint members to these positions. Tony?
It's just a thought, really. I know these were set up previously. I'm not against them in principle, but I do think we need to define them very carefully. If you're going to have a title as a lead councillor, I think it's very clear what that actually is and what the authority is for that individual operating in that role. So you've got a lead councillor for, I don't know, housing, whatever they are. You know, again, that's the other thing, is what is it that the council is interested in having lead councillors in, and why is that? I see this as personally, I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but I think that we're just about to do a review of our sort of corporate strategy, what that actually is, and we're all going to talk about what this council is actually for and what it's actually interested in doing. And I think as a consequence of that conversation, it may be easier then to decide where it is that we feel we may want to have lead councillors, rather than just choose them ad hoc now, without really understanding why it is that we're doing it.
I mean, obviously this came out of the previous council. This was kind of like
but we're just about to review that, so maybe we're about doing it.
Yeah, I think the overall concept, as I understood it, was basically a point of contact for people. If you had an issue with sport, you went.
Yeah. It may be that the priorities for this council have changed.
Okay. Vicky, sorry, Katie, then Vicky.
Just from, somebody who was a lead councillor, I would say that it is really useful, extremely useful, because members of the public know who they can come to on that particular issue. Other councillors know who you can go to in that particular issue, and it has helped me be able to access and reach out to more people and be able to help in my particular area of young people. And so I do think that it is useful and important.
Okay. Vicky, then Kevin.
As Councillor Gibbs has pointed out, we are about to look at the whole council and our aims and things. So I would like to propose that we delay this.
I'll second that.
We have our strategy, our plans, our vision sorted.
Okay. Are you happy to go to the vote, or do you?
The point I was going to make is that a lot of it depended on who was the lead councillor. And, you know, the lead councillor for youth was a very useful job. I think lead councillor for economic development was a complete waste of time. Because what does this council do in terms of economic development? It's not instantly apparent. And the same with, contacts with the police, etc. Most of that is actually done at Cornwall Council level. So although in theory it's nice to have a lead councillor for policing, the practicalities are the lead councillor for policing is just a title. So my view is that we need to probably move away from the lead councillors as a concept and just build on the councillors who are liaising with actual existing groups. So we need at least a youth liaison councillor to liaise across the whole broad area. We need a veterans liaison councillor to liaise with British Legion and others. If there's an actual established point of contact within the community that we can liaise with, I think that's great. If it's just a title that somebody happens to have around this table, then it's largely pointless.
Okay. We've got a proposal which is to defer this until after we've done the corporate overview. All in favour? Okay, against? Abstain? Okay, so we're going to defer that. To appoint a member to outside bodies who have requested a council representative. The first one is Bude Twinning Association. Additionally, that goes to the mayor. I see no reason to break that chain, so if everyone's happy, I'll take that.
Thank you.
Community Area Partnership.
I'm actually putting forward Councillor Lorraine Corrigan-Turner for that role.
She's happy with that, is that?
Yeah. We have had a conversation.
Okay, yeah, I mean, she was on it before, I believe, wasn't she? So yeah, all right, let's carry on with that.
Okay.
The CCTV committee.
That was me.
Would you like to continue with it?
I'm trying to strip back stuff because I know that I'm going to be giving my all to.
Should we give it to Councillor Jennings? No.
Yeah, it is. So what it entails is going to CCTV committee meetings. You never review CCTV images at all. You're talking about the management of the community CCTV system, which is located in the police station in Bude. And so you're talking a lot about stuff like GDPR issues, handling of data, and then you're also talking about the physical location of cameras and helping people put up signage, and it's about the management system of the system and how it's operated rather than actually doing the operating.
I'm quite happy to do it if
okay. Yeah.
Someone requested, but
okay. If you're happy with that, we'll put Paul on it. Put Paul.
I wouldn't.
My side of the police would be good. You, Mr. Chair.
I prefer the other side.
We have free
board at home.
I think they're quarterly.
Quarterly.
Okay.
Quarterly.
Right. Okay.
I'll hear in due course.
Yeah. Yeah. Connect Bude. Councillor Jennings, I feel, given your passion for buses,
I'm 100% for the buses, but I ain't going to.
I'm going to propose you.
I'll do it, but I'm not going to put up with all this.
That did. Councillor Jennings is on.
I second that.
Well done. It is absolutely ridiculous.
Right, Bude Valley Management Action Group. Yeah, we're happy with that. Everybody, yeah, good. And finally, Bude Canal and Harbour Society.
I might have to declare an interest on that. I'm a trustee and I'm on their committee.
Okay.
But I am quite, if the council are happy for me to have a dual role.
Yeah, carry on.
We'll go to Chris, who I believe is from the Harbour Society.
Chairman,
We'd like to have a member. The only thing is that they clash with planning meetings sometimes. So it would be useful if there was someone who wanted to do this, who could forego planning meetings. Because when we have planning meetings,
I have to leg it.
Yeah.
We'll leave, she'll stay as long as she can. And I'll try to get through the agenda as quickly as possible. Sometimes I bring things forward, but to have a council member, it would be useful if someone who wasn't on the planning committee would come and be able to stay in the whole of the meeting.
Okay. Anybody fancy it?
Two on people. Just because you've done it before.
I have, but I'm also on planning.
As we just found out.
Planning's once
I
every
could leg it. I could leg it with a colleague.
Planning's once every 2 weeks. If you squeezed it or do you meet weekly?
We meet once a month, third Wednesday of the month. So sometimes it works by progression, but quite often it doesn't. Yes.
Anybody?
Well, I think when Mr. Tuesday was on it once, he would stay, but at that time he had to go and pick up a child, maybe a grandson at school or something.
That was correct. That was a little while ago.
Mr. James, you'll do it?
No,
Yes, your hands up, my friend.
I'm just going to say, surely between Chris and the planners, they could work out when
I
the
did.
planning meetings are, and he could.
I did just suggest that, yeah.
And Vicky could do it.
Vicky and I will cover it.
Okay, yeah. Okay, one of them will come. Brilliant. Well done.
Move on.
I believe there is some discussion that maybe the planning meetings will be on a different day at 10 a.m. in the morning, possibly.
No, I don't know anything about that, and I'll leave that to the planning committee.
Limited number of meetings for business.
Yeah, we're gonna move on to receive a verbal report on the emergency plan live exercise.
I just want to throw a bit of a curveball into everybody, but specifically through you.
Okay.
You've just voted or just nominated people to be representatives of this council on these bodies. Now, Councillor Gibbs made the point, what is their role? And there needs to be something defined. Councillor Colwell said, do we actually need these people? Now, I believe it is perfectly fine by me that we have council representatives on these local bodies. But I remember, shall we say, issues between local bodies, and I'm going to name the town team and the climate partnership, which had council representation. And as far as I know, in my view, nothing came to the public from that representation. And I think it caused a great deal of problem. So, carry on being representatives, but can somebody kind of have a think of what you put to the public from your representation?
Okay. I think we were going to do this in the previous meeting and we deferred it and threw it out to the groups to request representation. And these are the ones that have. So maybe the first meetings, the relationship role will be more defined because maybe some want more involvement than others. Stuff like that. Councillor Gibbs.
Just to reply, because I think it's a perfectly valid point in so much as, again, it should be really part of our corporate review, because what bothers me slightly is whilst you've got organisations who may request councillor input, what bothers me a little bit about that is that it could be seen as a lobbying tool, where you've got these organisations who have got a greater voice around the table than those who haven't been engaged or don't engage or don't even realise. Because there's hundreds of organisations in the town that may feel they would benefit, but don't actually know it's even an opportunity. So whilst I'm not against it in principle, I do think it needs a bit of a review in relation to what that is. I think there needs to be a clear set of terms for doing it, and there needs to be a clear set of responsibilities in relation to what the role is within the group that they're part of, and what that means both ways. Because like I say, what worries me slightly is you could have groups here that are lobbying for particular things. You then get a greater voice at the table than perhaps others don't.
I think you'd probably end up needing terms of reference for every individual group. Well, the Twinning Association is effectively, they visit us once a year and I go down and give a speech and, you know.
But if that's what it is, that can be.
The Mayor of France does the opposite, which is reciprocation. Yeah. The town team having a representative is a decision-making body in control of large amounts of money. So having the same terms of reference for me handing out cheese sandwiches is,
Yeah, so the question for the council is, do they want to do it? Is it reasonable for that? I think that's the point, and I think
Yeah,
it's worth
I
a
think-
conversation.
yeah, I think, you know,
I'd agree.
it would be group dependent, I think.
Yeah.
You know, the Twinning Association is literally that. Unfortunately, it's there. I didn't get the invite to come to France this year, so.
There's always another year.
Yes.
Although I did get one to Mr. Macron's climate.
You did.
Oh, no.
I did. 3 days in Nice.
Right.
Couldn't honestly say yes
Not a good
and
look.
justify it to the public.
Yeah, the climate change, great.
Yeah,
Flying over.
yeah. I've gone over there.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just quickly.
Yeah.
I think part of the problem here is we've conflated groups that have different needs. So
Exactly,
there's almost,
yeah.
it's not quite a statutory responsibility, but there's a strong anticipation that we will appoint someone to the community area partnership. We've kind of got a choice, but we did a bit churlish if we didn't send someone. So I've lumped those in with other ones that there's more of a discussion to have about that.
Yeah.
So it's administrative laziness on my behalf. So I apologise.
No,
It's just part of corporate
yeah,
discussion.
it is. Yeah, like I say, you know, the Twinning Association is basically just go down and represent. You know, it's different things. Anyway, we're going to move on to receive a verbal report on emergency plan live exercise.
I'll keep this short for Councillor Tilsley. So we had a very successful live exercise with our volunteers, our community flood volunteers last week. The public also joined us in her role from the Environment Agency. Effectively, we sent the volunteers out. Well, it was led by Cornwall Community Flood Forum, and they sent the volunteers out to find pre-hidden pieces of paper that had emergencies on them. And they then phoned those in to myself and the facilities manager, Steve Hayes, who were based here. And then we in turn had to phone, I think, the newly appointed head of emergency planning at Cornwall Council, who very kindly on his at home answered the phone to made up the problems and then informed us what we had to do. And it was really quite an eye-opening exercise in the panic that comes on when you've got more than one group phoning you with a problem, which is very likely to happen if this is ever, heaven forfend, called into play. So it was a steep learning curve as to, you know, what information you have to get, how you prioritise that information, but it went very well. We haven't yet made public our community plan because there are representatives within it, our community flood plan, who are now changed because of the change of the council. So as soon as we've appointed the new representatives for the council, we will do some comms and say that there is now this plan and that there are people trained to be called upon in times of flood.
You did say it's purely flood, isn't it? It's missing off
This instance, it's only flood. Yeah.
purely flood.
Okay.
And they don't get wet. Then the idea is they don't go and rescue people. They let us know what problems are and feed that back.
Okay. Thank you.
This business, and we got people up at Eel Bridge and out towards Weeks and Merryway.
So
that's
The washdown was
yeah, I know, but that's where the problem always is, isn't it? It starts up here. It don't start here. It starts up.
the volunteers live locally. They will be sent to where they need to go in case of emergency. And obviously, the more the community knows about the plan, the more likely the community is to ring us and go, "It's getting wet."
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. You got people. You need people up there telling you it's flooding up here. It's heading your way.
Actually, just one other point, just quickly, that was quite useful that came out of doing the exercise. So in phoning the emergency planner, chief emergency planner at Cornwall Council with one of the example emergencies, it was to potentially find somewhere to vacate people in Hanover House if there was a flood. And the designated place for Cornwall Council is the leisure centre. Now, if flood is affecting Hanover House, you're very unlikely to be able to get over the bridge to Hanover. So that information was useful to work out through doing the exercise to feed back to Cornwall Council. So as far as they're concerned, they may need to find an alternative if there was a flood there. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Excellent. Right. To approve and sign the Future Coast Bude funding agreement. We all had the opportunity to go to briefings. I hope everybody took it. The one I went to was certainly well attended.
I didn't know about.
You're looking at me blankly again.
I know. But I think I'm nearly on. Yes, I got the last email I got was on Friday, so I'm now getting emails from the council. So it's looking.
His experience is so popular because
Right.
email issues.
Right. Okay. Yeah, because I got one back saying you'd resigned.
Yeah, exactly. That was my old email address.
Yeah.
For some reason, my old email address was being used, so I haven't had any email for months.
I kind of sat there and thought,
Not even started.
yeah.
That's having a rumour.
Right, okay, anyway, on topic. Is everybody happy with it?
Is this,
That's correct, Paul.
Yeah.
Aye. Well, on here, there's vacancies, there's numbers that need to be put in by somebody. So we're voting on something when we don't know, because they've got to insert funding and blah, blah, blah. There's 3 or 4 inserts, insert. So I just wonder how we can vote on something when there's holes. That's all.
I was going to say, Reece, could you know what he's...
Well, it's let me show you that one. Well, it's in, I got my arms. There's little bits there that are highlighted in, there's amounts. Obviously, in principle, fine, but
Where are you seeing?
yeah, there's other inserts that they are highlighted. That's highlighted by.
I think the reason for this, sorry, go on, Reece.
To clarify that, the detail that we provided is in the schedule.
Yeah.
And the agreements, because they are being made with the numbers of organisations, are to be transferred.
So they'll be bespoke for each organisation.
Okay.
Yeah.
The numbers that we're talking about there, so we are in elements of the schedule, which
So what you've got, Paul, basically is a schedule outlining what we'll have to do as a delivery partner.
Yeah.
Why there are gaps or inserts in this is a generic contract that each delivery partner, and there's more than one, will get. So this isn't filled in to say Bude-Stratton Town Council and the amount, because this is what the contract will look like for each delivery partner.
Purely a draft.
Yeah.
Or we're signing a draft.
Well, no, but you've got the information in the schedule, which will then be put into this.
It was all covered in the briefing.
What briefing?
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
I was just going to say, from what I've seen of it and from the briefings attended, a lot of thought seems to have been gone into it, and we are certainly being given a lot more information than what we were ever given when we joined Bude Climate Partnership.
I would agree.
And there is even an exit strategy in there.
Councillor Gibbs.
All I can say is that, speaking as the chair of the town team, we've been engaged with this process now for over 12 months. This hasn't come out of the blue. There's been a tremendous amount of work that's gone into getting to this point here, with an enormous amount of conversation, thought, and to reach this point. And I would, again, be cautious of talking about the climate partnership in the same sentence as this. It's a government agency, the EA, supported by Cornwall Council, and this is actually a government initiative. It's entirely different and entirely differently organised from the climate partnership. This is not a well-intended group of individuals being funded by the National Lottery. This is a government-led national initiative. We're being asked as a town to contribute and be involved in this, and it's an opportunity for Bude to receive funding that is not going to other parts of the country that might need it. And this is a sort of one-off opportunity as well. And I would suggest that whilst not all of this necessarily may be palatable to everybody, it is worthwhile considering that by accepting an offer of this funding, which is really what we're doing, we're accepting the money, that this may lead and would most likely lead to other opportunities to develop our town further for the better of everybody in the future. If you reject it, it's going to go away and we won't get it again.
Oh no, I'm all for it.
And like I say, from the town team point of view, we've been involved in it for 12 months. It's been run incredibly well.
Who's the chair?
Oh, well, it's not the town team who've been running it. We've been involved. I certainly have not been running this. I wouldn't be capable of doing it.
Yeah. Okay, Kevin. Yeah. And then
that one there. That question mark.
This is not going to be easy. If anybody sitting around the table thinks that this comes with no reputational cost to this council, or with no little bits of problems and people throwing up that we've all become woke and green and God knows what else, then think again, because I would advise everybody to be aware that we are signing up to iterative process, and within that process is the acceptance of climate change and sea level rise. And I fully support it. I completely support it. But I also want every single member of this council to go in with their eyes open, because this is a large amount of money that could be very useful to this town for a number of projects, most of which are going to be probably non-controversial, but there will be some of them, especially the educational element, that will be controversial. And I don't want this council to have a repeat of the climate partnership where we're all for it, we're all agreeing that the money was great to come into the town, and then when things started to go a little bit pear-shaped and a few people were throwing a few accusations around, this council ducked for cover and cut the climate partnership loose.
Steady.
The past council.
A previous iteration.
Yeah, I don't think that's right. I don't think that's a fair representation of what happened. No. But I don't want to get into that bum fight tonight. Okay, so let's fix our gaze, so to speak, on what is in front of us.
I've not spoken before, so...
Have a go at it, Councillor Richards. Welcome to the team.
I'm pleased to listen to what he had to say, because I've been a bit disturbed about all sorts of things, about who was leading the initiatives and where the money came from. But it's, it's made a lot more clear to me now that there's a lot of money being spent here to protect us against coastal erosion, but in a way which not everybody's going to agree with. And unfortunately, I mustn't say this because I have some interest in the matter, but I'll say it anyway. Thank you. I thought that the Anmore chappie used one sort of understanding of where the money's coming from. And he said, because there's going to be huge, great amounts of sand everywhere, then Anmore won't be in danger of any erosion. Now that was new, and that was put there so that Cornwall could change their attitude. They held one opinion and then suddenly they changed it. And I'm getting very confused about who's giving out the money, what happens. Yeah. And it's not very clear. And there's a hell of a lot of bad feeling around in the town. And everybody I see says, we don't worry about a bit of sand, it'll all get washed away anyway. And then a lot of other people say, well, we liked it before we had any of those dunes. And it's not been made clear what is going on. I'm sorry, but perhaps this body should start helping people.
If Anmore goes under water, Bude's gone. So don't worry.
I'll be sat on the roof of my place.
Well, that's the sort of joke we have.
No, it is.
Yeah.
Right then.
What happens is you get a bit of water moving sideways and suddenly you've got suction going underneath. I'm just a mathematician, so I don't really know about these things.
I'm fully aware.
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Jones.
Joking about it doesn't help. We want some explanation and clarification, so everybody is starting in the same position.
Right, I will go to Councillor Jennings, but
I won't say it
in
again.
October, the council did vote to be part of this project. Now we're...
I'm well aware of that, but are we going to end up as it was with the other lot, being being the lead partner and spending all the time in the dark. I mean, who would trust the town team with anything after what they wanted to do with our town?
You said the other lot, you weren't talking about the town team, you've just thrown the complete wrong organisation into this conversation.
Yeah.
And we need to look forward. Oddly enough, this is called Future Coast Bude, and we need to be looking at the future. What went on over the last 4 years?
No.
Actually, I'm not going to say it because I'll have a 70-page word salad in front of me tomorrow. But
if you'd like to talk about the town team, I'll be quite willing to do it at any point.
I will have nothing to do with them whatsoever after what they wanted to do to Bude. The point I'm making is, are they going to be?
Hang on, shush.
Are you going to be leading? Are they going to be leading us, or are we going to be leading them?
Hang on a minute, are you confusing the town team with the climate partnership?
No, I'm talking about the town team.
Do you actually know what we do?
Yes, I know what you want.
Tony, please, just, all right, we'll deal with it later. Darky, stick to the agenda item, please. It's nothing to do with the town team, all right?
Well, who's running it then?
EA.
The Environment Agency, the Cornwall Council. Did you attend the briefings?
Yes. And I explained to those people quite a bit about Bude, because they didn't know a lot, to be honest.
And that's probably a good reason for the town council to be involved, because we should know a lot about Bude, like Lansdowne Lane being called Lansdowne Lane, for example. So I would say that, there's a good reason for us to be involved would be our local knowledge. Peter?
Yes, I would like to bring us back to the agenda and...
yeah, please.
We've approved and signed the Coast Bude funding.
Seconded.
Yes.
Okay, all in favour? Against? Abstain? Okay, I've given me the big Manson lamp eyes, Darky. You didn't vote. Right, okay. Any items of correspondence from the clerk? Go on.
No, just very, very quickly. I did, as you've all seen, you've had an invite to the 20 mile per hour meeting.
Yeah.
Now, somewhat naively and optimistically, I had hoped we'd appoint a lead councillor for transport that we could just send there, but that didn't happen. We have. Okay.
Well, we're Connect Bude, it's close enough. Yeah.
So can we have through you, Mr. Chair, can we have a volunteer to attend this meeting? Because it's not open
is
to
anybody
all of you.
interested in
Just really
attending the 20 mile an hour meeting?
In addition to Councillor LeBroy, he'll be, and Councillor Emery, he'll be there.
I've got it in my diary.
Okay, I propose Councillor Gibbs.
That's great. Thank you very much.
I've got a car.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Two should be fine. Okay.
And Stratton.
Yeah, Bude-Stratton, job done.
Councillor Gibbs and Councillor O'Sullivan will be attending.
Actually, but it's fine.
Yes.
To note the date of the next meeting, Thursday, the 3rd of July, 2025, it's noted back.